Let me begin with the truth that most people refuse to believe. I am 103 years old, and I am not alive today because of good genes. I am alive because of the choices I repeated every single day for decades. People often look at someone my age and say the same thing. You must have incredible genetics. They say it as if longevity were some kind of lottery ticket handed out at birth, as if the story of a long life were written in bloodlines and chromosomes long before a person ever takes their first step. But I have lived long enough to watch that belief fall apart. My father died of heart disease before he turned 60. Two of my uncles struggled with diabetes. In my family, sickness was common and early aging seemed almost inevitable. If genetics were destiny, I should have followed the same road. I should have been another predictable statistic, another example of inherited decline. Yet here I am. Over a century of life has given me a strange advantage. I have watched entire generations grow old. I have buried friends who were 20 and 30 years younger than I was, and I began to notice something that most people overlook. The people who aged well were not always the ones with the best genes. They were the ones with the best habits. What you eat each day, how often you move your body, the quality of your sleep, the way you respond to stress, the substances you expose your body to over decades. These quiet decisions accumulate year after year, shaping the way your body ages. Scientists today call this epigenetics. They say genes may create the blueprint, but lifestyle determines how that blueprint is expressed. I did not know that word when I was young, but I understood the principle long ago. Your genes may whisper possibilities. Your lifestyle decides the ending of the story. By the time a man reaches 103 years of age, he has watched enough life unfold to recognize patterns that others miss. When you live this long, you begin to see that health does not collapse suddenly one day. It erodes slowly, quietly, through thousands of small decisions repeated year after year. Most people imagine disease as something mysterious that appears without warning. But in many cases, the body has been signaling distress for decades. The tragedy is not that illness appears, the tragedy is that the warnings were ignored. The first lesson I learned about health was something very simple. What you eat every day becomes the chemistry of your body. Food is not merely fuel for hunger. It is information that instructs your cells how to function. When I was a young man, our meals were simple. We ate vegetables grown in the soil near our homes, grains that had not been stripped of their nutrients, fruits that were picked in season. We did not call it a diet. It was simply the way people ate before convenience replaced nourishment. Decades later, I watched the world change. Processed foods appeared everywhere. Sugar became hidden in almost everything. Meals were engineered to be addictive rather than nourishing. People began consuming large amounts of calories but very little real nutrition. Over time, the results became impossible to ignore. Obesity increased. Diabetes spread through families like a quiet epidemic. Heart disease, which once seemed rare, became one of the most common causes of death. Scientists now understand that the food we eat can influence inflammation, metabolism, and even gene expression. Some nutrients help the body repair itself. Others slowly damage the delicate systems that keep us alive. A man cannot eat poorly for 40 years and expect his body to behave as though nothing happened. The second habit that shaped my life was movement. I never followed a formal exercise program. In my youth, exercise was simply part of living. We walked long distances, carried heavy objects, worked with our hands, and spent far less time sitting. The human body was designed to move. Muscles strengthen the bones. Movement improves circulation. Physical activity helps regulate blood sugar, supports the heart, and keeps the brain sharp. But modern life introduced something our bodies were never meant to endure: constant inactivity. I have watched people spend decades sitting at desks, sitting in cars, sitting in front of glowing screens late into the night. The body slowly weakens when movement disappears. Muscles shrink, metabolism slows, energy fades. Yet the opposite is also true. When people move regularly, even in simple ways, the body responds with remarkable resilience. Joints remain flexible, blood vessels remain strong, the brain receives a constant supply of oxygen and nutrients. Even now, at my age, I walk every day, not because I am trying to be extraordinary, but because the body thrives on use. The third factor that shapes health more than most people realize is sleep. Sleep is the body's repair cycle. While we rest, the brain clears metabolic waste, hormones reset their rhythms, and damaged cells begin the process of repair. Without sufficient sleep, the body struggles to maintain balance. In recent decades, people have begun sacrificing sleep for productivity, entertainment, and endless digital distraction. Lights stay on late into the night. Screens glow inches from tired eyes. Many people sleep far less than their bodies require. But the body remembers every hour of lost rest. Poor sleep disrupts hormones that control hunger and metabolism. It increases stress hormones such as cortisol. Over time, chronic sleep deprivation contributes to weight gain, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and cognitive decline. For most of my life, I followed a simple rule: sleep when the day is finished and wake when the sun rises. I did not need a laboratory to tell me what the body already knows. Another habit that shapes health quietly but powerfully is the way we respond to stress. Life will always contain difficulty. I have lived through wars, economic collapse, personal loss, and moments of fear that younger generations can scarcely imagine. Stress itself is not the enemy. The danger lies in how we carry it. Chronic stress keeps the body in a state of constant alarm. Hormones designed for short bursts of danger begin circulating endlessly. Blood pressure rises, inflammation increases, the immune system weakens. Some people allow stress to consume their lives. They worry constantly, replay past mistakes, or imagine disasters that have not yet happened. The body cannot distinguish between a real threat and one created in the mind. Over decades, that constant tension becomes physical illness. I learned early in life that the mind must be trained just as the body is trained. When difficult moments came, I focused on what could be controlled and released what could not. I spent time in quiet reflection, walked outdoors, and maintained friendships that kept my spirit steady. Peace of mind is not a luxury, it is a biological necessity. There is also another factor people rarely consider when discussing genetics: the substances we allow into our bodies. Smoking, excessive alcohol, environmental toxins, and chemical exposures all accumulate over time. The body is capable of detoxifying small amounts of harmful substances, but it cannot fight a constant flood. I watched friends smoke for 40 years and wonder why their lungs failed. I saw others drink heavily through middle age and struggle with heart and liver disease later in life. The body remembers every exposure, every cigarette, every toxic chemical, every habit repeated thousands of times. The remarkable truth, however, is that the body also remembers positive choices. Eat nourishing foods for decades, and the cells adapt to strength. Move daily, and the cardiovascular system grows resilient. Sleep well, and the brain maintains clarity. Manage stress, and inflammation remains under control. Over a lifetime, these small behaviors create a biological environment in which disease struggles to take hold. Modern science has begun to confirm what many of us discovered simply by observing life. Researchers now speak about lifestyle medicine, preventive health, and the profound influence daily habits have on chronic disease. But from where I stand after more than a century on this earth, the principle is not complicated. Your body is listening to everything you do. Every meal sends a signal. Every hour of movement strengthens or weakens your systems. Every night of sleep repairs or neglects your cells. And every decision you repeat becomes the architecture of your future health. Genes may offer possibilities, but the life you live determines which of those possibilities becomes reality. When I was a young man, most people believed that our health was written into us at birth, like ink on paper. If your parents suffered from heart disease, people assumed you would too. If diabetes ran through your family, it was considered almost unavoidable. Genes were seen as a kind of destiny, a silent authority shaping the limits of our lives. But the longer I lived, the more I saw that this belief was only part of the truth. In my lifetime, science has uncovered something remarkable. Researchers began to discover that genes are not rigid commands. They are more like instructions waiting to be interpreted. The way those instructions are read can change depending on the environment inside the body. Today, scientists call this epigenetics. The word may sound complicated, but the principle is surprisingly simple. Our genes contain thousands of possibilities, yet many of them remain silent until something activates them. Lifestyle, what we eat, how we move, how we sleep, how we manage stress, can influence which genes become active and which remain quiet. In other words, the story written in your DNA is not fixed. Imagine your genes as a vast library filled with books. Each book contains instructions for building proteins, repairing tissues, regulating metabolism, and protecting against disease. But not every book is opened at the same time. Some remain closed for years, others are read repeatedly. Lifestyle determines which books are opened. This is why two people with similar genetic risks can experience completely different health outcomes. One person lives with chronic stress, poor sleep, processed foods, and inactivity. Another person nourishes their body, moves daily, sleeps deeply, and cultivates calm. Though their genes may be similar, their biological environments are entirely different, and the body responds accordingly. One of the most fascinating discoveries supporting this idea comes from research on telomeres, the tiny protective caps located at the ends of our chromosomes. You can think of them as the plastic tips at the ends of shoelaces, preventing the threads from unraveling. Every time a cell divides, telomeres shorten slightly. Over time, when they become too short, the cell loses its ability to function properly. This process contributes to aging and the gradual decline of tissues throughout the body. For many years, scientists believed that telomere shortening was simply an unavoidable consequence of time. But later studies began to reveal something extraordinary. Lifestyle influences the rate at which telomeres shorten. Research led by Nobel Prize winning scientist Dr. Elizabeth Blackburn showed that factors such as chronic stress, poor diet, and sedentary living can accelerate telomere shortening. On the other hand, healthier lifestyles, balanced nutrition, physical activity, and emotional well being appear to protect telomeres and slow the aging process at the cellular level. This means the choices people make every day may literally influence the biological pace of aging. I find that idea both humbling and hopeful. Another powerful body of evidence comes from the field of lifestyle medicine, particularly the work of physicians who study how lifestyle changes can influence chronic disease. One example often discussed is the work of Dr. Dean Ornish, who conducted studies demonstrating that comprehensive lifestyle changes, including plant-based nutrition, moderate exercise, stress management, and social connection, could improve heart health and, in some cases, even reverse certain aspects of coronary artery disease. Think about what that means. For decades, people believed heart disease was largely a genetic fate. Yet these studies suggested that daily behaviors could influence whether the disease progressed or retreated. That realization represents a profound shift in the way we understand health. We have also learned valuable lessons by studying populations known for exceptional longevity. Researchers investigating regions often called the blue zones, areas where people regularly live well into their 90s and beyond, noticed consistent patterns in lifestyle. These communities are not defined by rare genetics. Instead, they share similar habits. They eat mostly whole, plant-centered foods. They move naturally throughout the day rather than relying on intense bursts of exercise. They maintain strong social bonds and experience a sense of purpose in their daily lives. Many of them sleep according to natural rhythms and live with lower levels of chronic stress. When researchers examined these populations, they did not find mysterious genetic mutations that explained their longevity. What they found instead were environments that consistently supported healthy living. Lifestyle again proved to be the dominant influence. This does not mean genetics are irrelevant. Some individuals inherit stronger resistance to certain diseases, while others may carry higher risks. But risk is not the same as destiny. Genes can create predispositions. Lifestyle determines whether those predispositions are expressed. Throughout my life, I have watched many people surrender their power too quickly. They hear that heart disease runs in their family, so they assume prevention is impossible. They believe diabetes is inevitable because a parent suffered from it. They accept declining health as something predetermined. But the body is far more adaptable than most people realize. Human biology is constantly responding to signals from the environment. Nutrients activate metabolic pathways. Exercise stimulates muscle growth and strengthens the cardiovascular system. Quality sleep regulates hormones and repairs tissues. Calm states of mind reduce inflammatory stress throughout the body. These influences accumulate slowly but powerfully. One day of healthy living will not transform your future, but 30 or 40 years of consistent habits absolutely will. I have had the privilege of witnessing how dramatically different two lives can become based on these choices. Some men I knew in my youth ignored their health completely. They smoked heavily, avoided physical activity, slept poorly, and lived under constant tension. Many of them developed serious illness before reaching old age. Others lived more thoughtfully. They walked often, ate simple foods, rested when the day ended, and nurtured relationships that brought them peace. Many of those individuals lived long, capable lives. When you observe enough of these stories, patterns begin to appear. The body rewards care. It also remembers neglect. Modern science has given us powerful tools to understand these patterns at the cellular level, but the wisdom itself is not new. For generations, people have understood that a balanced life nourishes both body and mind. What has changed is our ability to see how deeply these habits influence biology itself. Today, researchers can measure gene expression, observe metabolic changes, and analyze biomarkers that reveal how lifestyle shapes health over time. The evidence continues to accumulate, reinforcing a message that might have sounded radical a century ago. Your health is not simply inherited, it is built. Built meal by meal, built step by step, built night after night of sleep and recovery, built through the way you respond to stress, through the air you breathe, through the substances you choose to avoid or embrace. When people ask me how I managed to live beyond 100 years, they often expect some hidden secret. But there is no secret. There are only thousands of ordinary choices, repeated with patience and consistency over the course of a lifetime. Genes may set the stage, lifestyle writes the script. At 103 years old, people often ask me what the secret is. They expect something mysterious, perhaps a rare genetic blessing or a special remedy passed down through generations. But the truth is far less dramatic. A long life is usually built in quiet ways, not through one extraordinary decision, but through thousands of ordinary ones repeated every day. Over the course of my life, I have watched entire generations search for miracle cures, miracle diets, miracle medications. Yet the most powerful influences on health have remained remarkably simple. The food we choose, the way we move our bodies, the rest we allow ourselves, the calm we cultivate in our minds, and the substances we decide to avoid. Genes may provide the starting point, but they do not dictate the entire journey. Science now confirms what many long lived people have observed firsthand. The body is constantly responding to the environment we create for it. Every habit sends signals through our cells, influencing metabolism, inflammation, and even the way our genes behave. In other words, the body listens. It listens to what you eat. It listens to how often you move. It listens to whether you sleep deeply or live in constant tension. And over time, it responds accordingly. The remarkable thing about this truth is that it places power back into our hands. Your health is not simply a matter of inheritance. It is something shaped day by day, decision by decision. I did not reach 103 years because my genes were perfect. I reached this age because I respected the simple needs of the human body for many decades. And if there is one lesson I hope my long life can offer, it is this. Your DNA may write the opening lines of your story, but the way you live determines how the rest of that story unfolds.